Hi, I'm Mike Thompson. In this video, I'm going to install some can lights. I'm going to replace this old 1980s light, and the position of this hole determines the position of all the other lights. So I'm going to enlarge this hole here in a minute. So I'm measuring down from the central beam to locate my lights, because they're, remember, determined by the position of that 1980s light. And I'm going to put in a little nail here, and then I'm going to put a string all the way across, because I don't really have a laser that could do this. So with that nail in there, now I can tie a string to this end. Now I'll go measure down the ceiling on the other side and put a nail in over here, and then I'll fix my string on this side. Okay, like that. And I'll do this to the other side of the ceiling as well. Now I need to measure the length of the room. My assistant here is helping me out so that we can locate our lights along that string on the ceiling. Okay, now the ideal position for each of these holes would be 38.5 inches off the wall. However, due to the fact that these air vents are not symmetrically spaced from each end, I'm going to have to cheat a little bit, and I'm going to go with 44 inches off of each wall. And so I'm going to make my mark there. Right there. And I'm actually going to turn it into I'm going to make a little X so it'll be easier to find later. Right there. And then I'm going to go measure 44 inches off the other side. So I'll drill this first hole here in my spot that I measured along the string, like so. Then I'm using a piece of wire about a foot long, and I'm pushing it up through that hole so that it sticks up through the insulation, because I need to be able to find my hole on the other side to check the position here in a minute. And then I'm folding the end over into a little loop just so that this wire can't be pulled through into the attic. Oh. Crap. So, there's wood right behind there, which means the other two on that side are going to need to move. I can move this, obviously. I told you that nothing in this house was symmetrical. So if there's wood right here, and I've got to have clearance to mount the can, I've got to move a decent bit each way. What I'm going to do is go in the attic first and go find the two wires from that side, see where they are and how close they are to the wood on over there, and then move them accordingly as necessary. So this is why it takes careful planning and measuring, because this is the most important part of the job. Installing the cans is very, very easy. Getting everything measured, symmetric, and positioned properly is the hard part. So now I'm going to head up into the attic, find my wires, and see how much clearance I have over there, and figure out exactly how misaligned these two are here. So, time to head up there. So here you can see my green wire right here by my foot, and you can see that it comes in and just barely missed this rafter here. So what I need to do is move my lights back to this, in between these two rafters here, closer to that vent, or I need to move it farther that way between the next set of rafters. But either way, I need to move at least 5 inches. There's my wire. You can see it just barely cleared. See it right there? Just barely cleared that rafter. So we're going to go down and check the other one down at that end. See where it came through. All right, you can see my wire here. Oh, here, let me show you here. It's right here by my foot. See that green right there? But you can see that it just barely cleared. It just barely cleared that rafter there. And so I've got to move this, because that obviously is not going to leave enough clearance for that can. So I'm back to my ideal measurements and drilling once again. There. All right. And fish the wire through once again so that I can find it up in the attic. Make the little loop in the end. This step's absolutely critical. And there you can see the little wire poking through the ceiling. And here's the can light that I'm going to be using. You can see those brackets there that are going to mount to each rafter on the ceiling. And then there's an electrical box here for the connections. So when I did the kitchen, I didn't have one of these. This time I bought one of these because it was an absolute mess trying to do it with the keyhole saw. So this is basically a giant hole cutter that goes inside of a drill, and then this pan catches all the dust, theoretically. So let's pop this boy open and see if it's going to be as good as it says it is. There we go. So that does that. This locks in place when the bit goes in. Since this bit has the 1/4 inch hex, it locks into these notches on the back side of these blades. So we'll pull that out, move these. Now obviously I need to move them the same amount. You'd never want them to be lopsided. So I'm going to set them to the diameter of my can light here. Now these are 6-inch can lights. There's some instructions and things in here. They give you a cutout template even, which I'm not going to use because I've already center drilled up in the ceiling where this is going to go. But I can use this template to position these. I'm going to put them back on 6 since I just moved it a second ago. 6.5 goes all the way up to 7 inches. I'm going to put it back right on 6. See if that matches up. It does not, because the 6 inches doesn't refer to the size of the hole. So let's go a little more. 6 1/4. They go in 1/4 inch increments, which is nice. 6 1/4 there. Oh, that's not the same. There's 6 1/4 there. No, we're going to need to go a little more. We'll go to 6 1/2. Okay, there we go. So this is a 6 1/2 inch hole that I'm cutting. This fixture is rated, it's airtight and it's rated for insulation direct contact. Now, this is the kind that you'd use if you've got access to your attic. If you don't have this kind, you'll need to get this kind here that I'll show you on the screen. But I've got plenty of attic access, so I bought this kind. It's a little bit cheaper. But all your connections and things go right in here. They've got different knockouts, or they've got these little clamps that are built in here in each corner. And I'm going to just daisy chain 6 of these together. And in here you can see they've even got simple little just push connectors. So all I got to do is strip the ends of my wires and push them in. And you can put 3 extra wires in each one. Here in your ground, your hot, and your neutral. So it's super, super handy. I really like the way this is set up. I used these exact ones for the kitchen can lights several years ago, and so I bought them again because I had so much, fun. All right, so I've got this adjusted, and this pretty much matches that template. Obviously, I want this to still be in contact with this ceiling gasket around here. So 6 1/2 is the hole that I'm going to do with this. And this is going to be super simple. So now that I've got this set, I'm going to put my bit back through here, and that's going to lock them in place so they can't slide anymore. And then this just has a quick connect like, impact drivers and things do. So there I go. I'll go chuck this up in the drill. But before I go drill any holes, I'm going to go back up in the attic and move the insulation out of the way from where my wires are. Because when I drill that hole, I don't want a bunch of nasty fiberglass insulation coming into the living room. So I'm going to go do that. Okay, now before I go any further up here, I'm going to put on my respirator because that fiberglass is always floating in the air and I'm about to stir it up here with this little shovel. So I'm going to put this on because I do not want it getting inside me. Because it's awful. And I'm going to put gloves on. Okay, now I'm ready. Let me just dig this out of the way here with this little shovel. Okay. And this is why I make sure to tie that loop in the end of that wire so that when I scrape over it like this, I don't pull the wire through and then lose my spot. And you can see the wire there right up against the sheetrock on the back side. Let me just get it loose here. Pull that a little bit. There it is. And you can see I've got plenty of clearance now. Excellent. And so now I can drill my hole. Yep. This requires a decent bit of torque and stability, and so for the subsequent holes, I switched to the big drill, because this little drill here is really just too hard to control. It worked, but not great. Boy, I like that. Oh, that's neat. No mess. And here you can see on the big drill. Just pull that off there and dump out the dust. Piece of cake. I love this thing. This little piece of wood here was actually my wife's idea so that I could enlarge this 1982 hole. Because you got to have a center point. Of course, the key is to make sure that wood is inside the diameter of your wing cutters. And so these brackets here adjust depending on the spacing between your rafters. But these don't fit between my rafters, so I've got to break them off. There's little notches here in both the male and female portions. You just grip it with your lineman's pliers here, bend it back and forth at that notch a couple of times, and it snaps off. Now I didn't get a super clean break, so I had to kind of bend this back in shape to get it to fit back in there. But then you also have to break the female portion, which is the wider section. You can see there's a couple notches there, and I'm going to break it at this first notch, because otherwise these brackets don't fit between my rafters in the attic. So fold it back, snap it a couple times, there, and boom, just like that. And now I'll do the other side of the light as well. And stick this back in there. So now this will fit between the rafters, but then it'll be able to expand back so that those tabs will go in, right here and here. And then there's a nail already, a double-headed nail already placed in each one, so I'll just pound that into the rafter. So I got my little electrical box open here on my first, where the 1982 light used to be. Push in my ground, and I can push in my hot and my neutral extremely fast, and then get this tucked in this little corner here. This has built-in clamps for romex in these top four corners, which is really nice, so I don't have to use any fancy cable clamps. This will be my master light, and all the other lights, the first set of lights will actually come off of this one, but the current will come in here first. And here's one side of the ceiling with all three cans installed. Sweet. So to make sure the can doesn't protrude down from the ceiling, I'm going to loosen this little wing nut in here because this is adjustable in height. Depending on what baffle you use and light bulb, you may need to raise or lower the socket here with this wing nut in your fixture. I'm going to raise it all the way so that my LED retrofit can fit up in there and have plenty of room. So here's the lights I'll be using. These are LED retrofit lights, so I don't have to buy the baffle separately because the trim baffles are surprisingly expensive, and these are going to be a lot more energy efficient than an incandescent bulb anyway. But the key about these is these are dimmable, and I wanted to be able to dim these things so it's not super bright all the time. And that's going to be really, really great. I'm super pumped about these. And they were a great deal. So now I need to break this connection. Otherwise, when I twist this up in there, in the socket, I'm going to be twisting all my wires and having to twist the big light fixture as well. So I just twist this in by itself and then reattach it once it's in. And there we go. Okay, now I can reattach my light. White to white and black to black, obviously. Now these little spring clips here are what hold the light up inside the can. They go in these little tabs. They're like little claws almost. You squeeze them, and on the inside of the fixture there, squeeze them and hook them in those little tabs, and then the spring action sucks it right up into the ceiling. It is awesome. And that's it. And then Alex is checking to make sure that the breaker in fact turned off the current in this box. And it did. Then we're going to remove this switch that used to control that light and replace it with this switch with a dimmer on the side, because we don't want these things full bright all the time. And button it all back up, and we'll give it a test. And here it is before. Notice how dark the corners are. And here it is after, with everything at full brightness. It's ridiculously bright in here now. In fact, we either keep the dimmer about half power, like so, or we don't use the lights on the fan at all. Well, now that I've showed you every single step that I went through, you can see that this project's really not all that difficult. A couple hours, maybe over a few days if you need to, and this is something that you can definitely do yourself. Just don't be afraid to try. Of course, if you are, call a person that knows what they're doing. But I hope this helped you out and maybe give you a little inspiration to complete one of your own projects. Go ahead and subscribe if you haven't already. I'm Mike Thompson, and thanks for watching. I really appreciate it.